It is easy to remember Michael Jordan as the man who could fly. He was the cultural architect of the 1990s, a figure so transcendent that he hovered above the laws of gravity and seemingly the laws of morality. To understand the tragedy of his marriage, rewind the tape to June 1996. The United Center is shaking. The Bulls have just clinched their fourth title. Michael lies prone on the locker room floor, clutching the game ball, sobbing uncontrollably. It is the image of a vulnerable God. But if you pan the camera slightly to the edge of that chaotic frame, you will find Juanita Vanoy. Impeccably dressed, standing with the poise of a first lady, she looks like the final piece of the perfect American puzzle, the supportive wife waiting for her hero. But the eyes never lie. While the world cheered for the athlete, Juanita was already living with a reality that no camera captured. Behind the tinted windows of their limousines and the doors of their Highland Park mansion, she was enduring a whisper network of infidelity, late-night gambling junkets, and a silence so loud it was deafening. This is not the story of basketball. This is the story of the woman who stood in the shadow of a deity for 17 years until the awful truth cost Michael Jordan the one thing he couldn't win back, her. And the price tag for her silence, a record-breaking $168 million. To truly understand the magnitude of the collapse, one must first examine the cracks in the foundation. The revisionist history paints a collegiate romance, but the reality was transactional and fraught with hesitation. They met in 1985 at a Chicago Bennigan's. Juanita Vanoy wasn't a starstruck groupie. She was 4 years his senior, a loan officer with her own career. In the beginning, she held the power, grounding the young rookie whose ego was rapidly outgrowing his orbit. But by 1988, with their first son Jeffrey on the way, the fairy tale flickered. It is a detail often scrubbed from the documentaries. Juanita actually had to hire a lawyer to formalize Jeffrey's paternity. The god of basketball did not eagerly embrace the role of father. He had to be legally corralled into it. The wedding itself, in September 1989, was the antithesis of romance. No cathedral, no guests. Just a 3:30 a.m. ceremony at the Little White Wedding Chapel in Las Vegas. Michael, looking like an afterthought, handed her a 5-carat diamond, but the setting screamed of reluctance. "I told her I loved her, but I didn't know what I was getting into," Jordan later admitted. From day one, Juanita wasn't just fighting for his heart, she was fighting his ambivalence. The marriage didn't start with a kiss. It started with a compromise. If the United Center was Michael's office, the night was his playground, a lawless zone with no referees. By the early 90s, Jordan's competitive fire had mutated into a voracious need for action. He was the king of the night, operating in smoky VIP rooms where the standard rules of marriage did not apply. The red flags were neon. During the 1993 Eastern Conference Finals, while Juanita was home shielding the kids, Michael was spotted in Atlantic City at 2:30 a.m. gambling away thousands just hours before a pivotal game against the Knicks. The press called it a lack of focus. Juanita likely recognized it as an escape. But cards were just the cover story. In Jordan's orbit, gambling was often a euphemism for a lifestyle that included a rotating cast of women. Entourages acted as human shields, filtering companions in and out of hotel suites to ensure no cameras captured the reality. Then the receipts surfaced. A $57,000 check from Jordan to a convicted cocaine trafficker named Slim Bueller was exposed. Jordan initially claimed it was a loan, then admitted it was a gambling debt. For Juanita, the humiliation was absolute. It proved her husband wasn't just working late, he was bankrolling a shadow life. She was married to a phantom who came home only to change his suit, leaving her to wonder which version of his airness would walk through the door next. For years, Juanita Vanoy had been fighting ghosts, nameless faces in the crowd, perfume scents that didn't belong to her. A wife can convince herself to ignore ghosts, but she cannot ignore a receipt. The awful truth finally exploded with a specific price tag attached: $250,000. The bomb had a name: Carla Nafel. She was a lounge singer whose voice had captivated the NBA legend during the Bulls' first championship run. Unlike the fleeting one-night stands whispered about in the locker room, Nafel was a sustained presence. The scandal erupted when legal documents exposed that Michael Jordan had paid her $250,000 to keep their relationship a secret. This was the smoking gun. This was no longer about trusting your husband. This was a documented financial transaction. The greatest athlete in the world had reached into the family bank account to buy a woman's silence. But the nightmare escalated. Nafel wasn't satisfied. She sued Jordan for $5 million, alleging he promised her the sum to stay quiet about a child she claimed was his. For Juanita, this was the breaking point. The details were tawdry and humiliating, splashed across every tabloid in America. The $250,000 payment was particularly stinging. It was a tangible metric of his guilt. It proved he knew exactly what he was doing and thought he could simply pay for it to go away. The Knaufel scandal stripped Juanita of her last line of defense, plausible deniability. The illusion of the golden couple was incinerated, leaving Juanita standing in the ashes, holding the bill for a mess she didn't make. There is a specific kind of hell reserved for a wife forced to wait for the results of her husband's paternity test, while the entire world watches. The Karla Knaufel saga had devolved from a financial scandal into a biological mystery. The question wasn't, did he cheat? That was now a foregone conclusion. The question was, did he leave a legacy in another woman's womb? For Juanita, this was the nadir of her dignity. She wasn't just the wife of an adulterer. She was being dragged into a tawdry daytime TV spectacle, wondering if she would have to explain a half-sibling to her children. In 2006, a judge finally ruled conclusively Michael Jordan was not the father of Knaufel's child. Legally, it was a victory. The $5 million extortion lawsuit crumbled. The fans cheered. The crisis was averted. But for Juanita, there was no victory in that courtroom. The DNA test exonerated Michael of fatherhood but convicted him of everything else. It didn't erase the years of intimacy that necessitated the test in the first place. The not guilty verdict was a hollow technicality. It proved that while he hadn't expanded the family tree illicitly, he had certainly been active enough to try. The stain of that public realization was something no judicial ruling could ever wash away. On January 4, 2002, the sports world was focused on Michael Jordan's latest comeback with the Washington Wizards. But while Michael tried to turn back the clock on the court, a legal brief filed in Illinois stopped time completely. Juanita Vanoy filed for divorce. It was a maneuver more shocking than any buzzer beater. For decades, the narrative was fixed. Michael was the son, and everyone else revolved around him. He was the one who ended careers, who dictated terms. He was the dumper, never the dumpy. But Juanita flipped the script. The petition cited irreconcilable differences, a polite cover for years of silent suffering. She demanded permanent custody and the Highland Park mansion. For the first time in his adult life, his airness was not in control. He couldn't intimidate a judge with a stare-down or out-hustle a divorce attorney. Although the petition would eventually be withdrawn, a temporary ceasefire in a war that wasn't quite over, the damage was permanent. The filing was Juanita's reclamation of power. It proved that she wasn't just a fixture in his house. She was a partner with a breaking point. The shockwave of 2002 proved that even gods can bleed, and it revealed that Juanita Vanoy was the only person brave enough to bring the giant to his knees. On December 29, 2006, the end arrived not with a bang, but with the cold silence of a legal filing. Just days before New Year's, Juanita and Michael issued a final decree. The lawyers called it mutual and amicable whitewashing, 17 years of rumors into a polite business transaction. But make no mistake, this was the final cut. In 2002, the filing was a scream for attention. In 2006, it was an autopsy. Juanita had realized that Michael's retirement from the NBA didn't mean a retirement from the lifestyle that destroyed their intimacy. The king of the night was never going to abdicate his throne. There was a surgical precision to this break. Juanita walked into the proceedings not as a victim asking for mercy, but as a creditor calling in a debt. She knew her worth. For Michael, this was the only loss in his life he didn't try to compete against. He accepted the defeat with a strange passivity. The greatest team in sports history, the Jordan family unit, was officially disbanded. The lights were turned off, and Juanita Vanoy walked out of the arena for the last time, never looking back. When the dust settled, the figure that emerged wasn't just a number. It was a global headline, $168,000,000. Along with the custody of the children and the 7-acre estate, Juanita secured what was at the time the largest divorce settlement in sports history. Predictably, the gold digger narrative was weaponized. Pundits claimed she robbed the king, but to view this as robbery is to fundamentally misunderstand the contract. This wasn't a lottery win, it was reparations. The $168 million was the calculated cost of 17 years of silence. It was back pay for every humiliated night, every gambling junket masked as a business trip, and the $250,000 of family money used to silence a mistress. Juanita had been the stabilizing force that allowed Michael to be Michael. Without her managing the chaos at home, would the Bulls dynasty have survived? Michael, a man defined by winning, didn't fight the number. He understood the value of a clean break. He wrote the check because the alternative, a public trial where Juanita testified about the real details of the Whisper Network, would have cost his brand far more. Juanita didn't walk away with unearned wealth. She walked away with the severance package for the hardest job in the world. The question wasn't, did she deserve it? The real question was it enough to pay for the scars? In the years following the divorce, Juanita Vanoy did something remarkable for a woman who had spent 2 decades in the spotlight. She evaporated. While others might have pivoted to reality TV or tell-all memoirs, Juanita orchestrated a masterclass in privacy. She took her millions, her dignity, and simply stepped out of the frame. This silence was not a retreat. It was a reclamation. Today, she lives a life unapologetically her own, collecting African-American art, practicing yoga, and finding a peace that was impossible inside the chaos of the Bulls dynasty. When the documentary The Last Dance aired in 2020, reigniting global obsession with Jordan, Juanita's absence was glaring. She refused to appear to validate his legend. Her silence spoke louder than any interview could. I know the truth, and I don't need to explain it to you. The ultimate vindication for Juanita isn't the bank account. It is the fact that she survived the fire without being consumed by it. She holds a title more exclusive than any MVP trophy. She is the only person who looked Michael Jordan in the eye, saw the man behind the myth, flaws and all, and decided he wasn't enough. She chose herself. And in a world that worships his airness, that act of self-love is the most powerful victory of all.